The chamber of the Intergalactic Alliance was vast, a hall carved from crystal and steel, floating above the shining core of a distant star. Thousands of alien delegates filled the rising platforms, their bodies glowing, twitching, or humming, with strange sounds. The ceiling itself was alive with a galaxy map, stars shifting and pulsing like a beating heart. Every corner of the room reminded newcomers of their place in something far greater than themselves. At the edge of the hall stood Captain Elena Ward, the representative of Earth. She was tall, with sharp eyes that carried both fatigue and fire. Around her, alien figures towered, some insectoid with glittering shells, some ghostly and translucent, others scaled like dragons with voices that rumbled like thunder. Compared to them, Elena looked fragile. Compared to their centuries of history, humanity looked like a child. The Illyrian ambassador floated forward, its body like a glowing jellyfish wrapped in threads of light. Its voice rang like bells struck by the wind. "Humans," it said softly, "are not yet ready. Their ships are crude, their lifespans too short, their emotions too wild. In times of crisis, they are better left as observers." Murmurs filled the chamber. Some clicked their mandibles in agreement. Others let out low vibrations of mock laughter. Humans had been in the Alliance for only 20 years, barely enough to earn a seat, and many still questioned why they were even allowed. "Here," Elena clenched her fists. She wanted to shout, but she remembered her father's words. Strength is not always in shouting. Sometimes it is in standing still, unbroken. She lifted her chin and spoke. "Every world here fears what is coming. You all know the name. You all saw what it did to the colonies. And yet, you argue instead of acting." At the center of the chamber, a great hologram blazed to life. It showed a monstrous storm of living plasma swirling across a star system. Entire planets were consumed, cities erased in seconds. The vision made the floor tremble, and some younger species hissed in fear. The Zorith commander, a warrior covered in molten red armor plates, slammed his claw against the ground. His deep voice shook the hall. "The Maelstrom entity grows stronger. With every star it feeds on. Our fleets fought it. They failed. It cannot be destroyed." A cold silence followed. Everyone knew the Maelstrom. It had swallowed 5 colonies already, leaving nothing but burning fragments drifting in the void. It was not a fleet, not an army, but a living storm, a creature of energy and hunger that bent the laws of physics themselves. No one had ever faced such a thing and won. The insectoid prime of the Shral leaned forward, his mandibles clicking in sharp rhythm. "You cannot fight a storm. The humans do not understand. They are reckless. They will throw themselves into the fire and call it bravery." Laughter spread again, cruel and dismissive. Elena felt her heart pounding. Anger rose in her chest, but behind it was something deeper, fear. She remembered Earth, small and fragile, still rebuilding after centuries of war. Humanity had only just begun to step into the stars. To lose their place now would mean fading back into silence, forgotten by the galaxy. She took a slow breath and spoke again, her voice steady but burning with emotion. "Maybe you don't understand us." The laughter died. The chamber grew quiet. Hundreds of eyes, glowing or shifting in strange colors, turned toward her. Elena's voice carried into the silence. "You all call us reckless. You say we burn too bright and too fast. Maybe that's true. But when your fleets fled from the Maelstrom, we studied it. When your colonies screamed for help, we sent ships, even though you told us not to. And when no one believed survival was possible, we dared to believe it still was." Her words hung in the air. Some aliens hissed in disapproval, but others remained silent, thoughtful. The Illyrian ambassador's lights dimmed. And what will humans do, Captain Ward? Throw your fragile ships into the storm? Sacrifice your people in vain? Elena's lips curved into a thin, determined smile. If that's what it takes to find a way forward, yes, because that is who we are. When the storm comes, humanity does not run. For a moment, the chamber felt alive with tension. The great hologram of the maelstrom flickered above them, painting every face in red firelight. The storm roared in silence, a monster no one knew how to kill. But as Elena stood beneath it, unflinching, a whisper passed through the chamber, something dangerous, something new. Hope. And for the first time in the long history of the Alliance, humanity's small, fragile voice carried more weight than all the ancient powers combined. The human fleet drifted at the edge of a dying star system, where silence pressed against the hulls like a heavy hand. Beyond the broken asteroids and black dust clouds, the shadow of the maelstrom entity moved. It was not a ship. It was not a creature. It was a storm that breathed. Lightning flashed across its swirling mass, tendrils of plasma reaching like claws into the dark. Entire planets had already vanished inside its burning heart. On the bridge of the Horizon Dawn, Captain Elena Ward stood with her hands clasped, behind her back. Her eyes never left the forward screen, where the storm's image grew larger, brighter, more alive. Around her, the crew moved quietly, each motion filled with tension. Fear lived in their bones, but so did determination. Beside Elena, Commander Jacob Vance, her second-in-command, spoke in a low voice. "Other fleets are holding back. They're waiting for us to test the storm first." Elena's jaw tightened. She wasn't surprised. The aliens wanted to watch, to see if humans would burn before they risked their own ships. "Then we give them a show," she said. The Horizon Dawn shook as the engines roared to full power. Across the void, other human. Ships lit up, sleek frigates, heavy carriers, and the massive Ark-class motherships that dwarfed them all. The motherships were humanity's pride, built not for elegance, but survival. Their steel hulls bore scars of past battles, their shields layered with chaotic energy fields no other species dared to copy. They were, like their makers, rough and unyielding. The storm noticed. The maelstrom shifted, its glowing eye turning toward the advancing fleet. A low vibration filled every ship, like a voice too deep to be heard but too powerful to ignore. The crew flinched as if it were inside their skulls. One young officer whispered, "It's looking at us." The storm moved. A wall of plasma tore from its core, stretching across the void like a tidal wave of fire. The human fleet braced. The first impact struck with blinding light. Shields screamed, metal groaned, sparks burst across consoles. But when the fire cleared, the ships still stood. "Shields at 60%, Jacob shouted. Elena gripped the console. "Hold formation. Feed the storm what it doesn't expect." Drones launched from the carriers, thousands of small, darting machines. But instead of flying in perfect, predictable lines, they moved, like chaos itself, weaving, scattering, colliding, reforming. To other species, it looked like madness. To humans, it was strategy. The drones began firing waves of distorted energy, not in neat bursts, but in fractured pulses, each one throwing off the storm's rhythm. The maelstrom twisted, confused. It tried to feed on the energy, but the chaos made it unstable. Its surface rippled with violent cracks of lightning. Jacob's eyes widened. "It's working. It doesn't like disorder." Elena's voice was calm, but her heart thundered. "Then let's remind it what humans are best at." The fleet surged forward. Railguns fired, streaks of tungsten slamming into the storm. Missiles curved in strange arcs, weaving through gravity wells before detonating inside its core. Human ships didn't fight with elegance. They fought with desperation, with every trick and gamble they had ever learned in their short, violent history. But the storm fought back. A second wave of fire exploded from its center, larger than before. It swallowed 3 frigates instantly, ripping them apart like paper. The crew of the Horizon Dawn watched in horror as their comrades vanished into the blaze. The screams echoed in their ears through broken comms before cutting to silence. Elena closed her eyes for 1 second. 1 second of grief. Then she opened them again. "Bring us closer." The crew turned to her in shock. "Closer?" Jacob's voice cracked. "Captain, if we go any nearer—" "Closer," she repeated, her voice steel. The Horizon Dawn pushed into the storm's outer edge. The ship shook as if the universe itself was trying to tear it apart. Lightning clawed across the shields, burning holes that closed and reopened in frantic rhythm. The crew held their breath. Through the chaos, Elena stared into the heart of the storm. For the first time, she saw something inside it, something beyond plasma and fire, a shape, a presence, not just hunger, but will. "It's alive," she whispered. Jacob froze. "Alive? You mean—" "Yes," Elena said. "It's not just a storm. It's a mind." The realization struck the crew like cold water. If the Maelstrom had a mind, then it could think. And if it could think, it could be fought. "Transmit a signal," Elena ordered. "What kind of signal?" "Any. All. Chaos, music, noise, everything we have. Overload it, confuse it." The comms flared to life, broadcasting thousands of human voices, songs, signals, data streams, even the heartbeat patterns of the crew. A storm of humanity's essence flooded into the Maelstrom. For a moment, the great storm faltered. Its tendrils curled inward as if in pain or confusion. The eye of fire flickered. On the bridge, every crew member felt it. The storm was listening. And in that fragile pause, Eleanor Ward saw a chance, a thin crack in an endless wall. "Ready all ships," she said. Her voice was low, but it carried a fire none could ignore. "This is where we make our stand." The human fleet pressed deeper into the burning edge of the Maelstrom. The void was no longer black. It was alive with furious light, streaks of blue fire, arcs of white lightning, and rivers of plasma twisting like living veins. Every second felt like standing inside a star that refused to die. On the bridge of the Horizon Dawn, alarms blared. Shields flickered in red arcs, sparks rained from broken panels, and smoke stung the crew's eyes. But not one soul left their post. They knew the risk, and yet none turned away. Captain Elena Ward stood firm, her face lit by the shifting glow of the storm outside. Her crew looked at her not just as their commander, but as their anchor. Fear lived in every corner of the ship, but Elena's presence kept it from consuming them. "Status of the fleet?" she asked. Commander Jacob Vance scanned the reports. His voice was grim. 4 frigates lost, 2 destroyers heavily damaged. Motherships still holding, but their shields won't last long. Elena nodded, her jaw tight. Every ship lost was a family gone, a story cut short. But mourning could wait. Survival could not. The Maelstrom shifted again, its enormous body swirling with violent hunger. Its tendrils lashed out, tearing at the human formation. Yet unlike the other species who had faced it before, the humans did not scatter. They adapted. Every time the storm struck, the fleet moved as one, reshaping their lines, twisting their attacks in ways that seemed reckless, but worked. Other species had called it madness. To humans, it was instinct. From the comms, voices of alien observers whispered in disbelief. They fight inside it. They bend instead of breaking. They are not running. But none of that reached Elena. Her eyes were locked on, the glowing heart of the storm. She remembered what she had seen, the shape within, the presence that was more than energy. It is alive, she repeated to herself, softly but firmly. And if it is alive, it can feel. Her words unsettled the crew. Jacob turned sharply. Captain, you're suggesting we can, what, talk to it? Elena's gaze never wavered. Not talk, but reach it, confuse it, distract it, make it hesitate. The crew exchanged nervous glances. Fighting an enemy made of flesh and blood was one thing. Fighting a storm with a mind, that was madness. But then again, madness was what humanity had always used to survive. Transmit the next wave, Elena ordered. Once again, the ships broadcasted signals, songs of earth, laughter, crying, static, and patterns no machine would dare call ordered. Human chaos spilled into the storm like an endless river. The maelstrom convulsed. Its swirling body rippled as though the flood of voices tore through it like blades. For a moment, the storm's tendrils stopped moving, as if listening, confused by this strange defiance. Then came the backlash. The storm screamed, not with sound, but with energy so powerful it shook the void itself. A tidal surge of plasma struck the fleet. One mothership, the Titan's Oath, took the full impact. Its shields collapsed, its hull burning bright as it drifted into the storm's mouth. For one long, silent second, the crew of the Horizon Dawn watched their sister ship vanish into the flames. The silence that followed was heavy, almost unbearable. Some crew members lowered their heads. Others clenched their fists, grief written across their faces. Elena's throat tightened, but her voice was steady. They died holding the line. We honor them by moving forward, Jacob whispered under, his breath, his voice raw. Forward into hell. The maelstrom's eye flickered again, but this time there was something new. For a split second, the storm pulled back, not out of weakness, but as if uncertain. Humanity had made it feel hesitation. Elena saw it, and her heart hammered. That's it. That's the crack, Captain, Jacob asked. She turned to him, her eyes fierce. If we make it doubt even for a moment, then it is not unstoppable. And if it is not unstoppable, then we can kill it, Jacob finished, his voice trembling with both fear and hope. The bridge fell quiet. The impossible no longer seemed impossible. Suddenly, a voice crackled through the comms. It was not human. It was the Illyrian ambassador, its tone sharp and almost panicked. Human fleet, withdraw at once. You cannot endure this. You will doom yourselves. Elena reached for the comms but stopped. She could hear the fear in their voice. Not fear for humans, but fear of what humans might prove. She switched the channel off. No one decides for us. The storm gathered itself again, light blazing brighter than a sun. It was preparing for another strike, one that could erase the fleet in a single breath. Elena stepped forward, her hand resting on the console. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, yet every syllable carried the weight of steel. All ships, prepare for full burn, stay close, stay alive. Humanity has never won by playing safe. We win by refusing to stop. The crew responded with a chorus of "Aye, Captain," their voices firm despite the fear in their eyes. The Horizon Dawn surged forward, followed by the remaining fleet. Engines roared like thunder, and the motherships lit up with defiant fire. Against the endless storm, their tiny forms looked fragile, almost laughable. But they did not break, and as they dived deeper into the heart of the maelstrom, the galaxy watched in silence, because for the first time in millennia, the storm itself seemed unsure. The void burned brighter than any sun. The maelstrom raged, a living tempest of fire and light, swallowing space itself. Human ships pressed forward, fragile sparks against an ocean of fury. No other species would have dared. But humans were not shaped by caution. They were shaped by struggle, by survival, by the endless habit of running into storms instead of away from them. On the horizon dawn, Captain Elena Ward gripped the railing, her eyes fixed on the storm's center. Lightning tore across the hull, shaking the ship until panels cracked and alarms screamed. Still, the engines roared on. Commander Jacob Vance stood beside her, sweat shining on his forehead. "Captain, if we push any further, the fleet won't hold." Elena's voice was calm, though her heart raced. "Then we hold anyway. The only way out is through." Her words rippled through the crew. Some swallowed their fear. Others tightened their grips on controls. No one turned away. The storm struck again. A wave of plasma slammed into the human line, throwing ships apart like leaves in a hurricane. A destroyer spun out of formation, its hull splitting open. For a moment, screams filled the comms, then silence as the ship broke into burning fragments. Pain carved across Elena's chest. Every loss felt like a knife, but grief was a fire she could not allow to spread. She whispered under her breath, more to herself than anyone, "Not in vain. None of you die in vain." Through the chaos, something stirred in the Maelstrom's heart. A shadow, a shape. The storm was alive, yes, but now Elena could see more. The plasma twisted around a core that flickered like a beating heart, and inside that heart, faint as a whisper, was structure, patterns, threads, something that was not pure chaos. Her eyes widened. "It's not only alive," she breathed. "It's built." Jacob turned sharply. "Built? By who?" The thought spread like lightning across the bridge. Could it be true? Was the Maelstrom not just a creature but a creation? A weapon? Elena's mind raced. If it had been built, then it had a purpose. And if it had a purpose, someone, somewhere, had made it to serve. "Magnify the core," she ordered. The screen zoomed, pushing past the swirling plasma. And there it was. Metal. Faint. Broken. But real. Fragments of colossal machinery turning within the storm like bones wrapped in fire. The Maelstrom was no natural beast. It was a machine and a living storm combined, a fusion of technology and energy beyond anything the Alliance had ever known. The crew gasped. Jacob's voice shook. "Dear God, it's not just a storm, it's an engine." Elena's heart pounded. An engine that devours stars. The storm lunged again as, if angered by their discovery, its tendrils lashed across the fleet, ripping apart another frigate. The crew felt the weight of despair pressing in. What kind of enemy could be fought if it was both alive and a machine? But Elena saw something different. If it was built, then it had flaws. No matter how ancient, no matter how powerful, no machine was without weakness. Her eyes burned with new fire. "Find me its rhythm. Every machine has one. It breathes, it feeds, it moves in patterns. Find the pattern, and we break it." The crew scrambled, pulling data, tracing the pulses of energy that flowed through the storm. Numbers flashed across screens, too fast to follow. But humanity's strength had never been in perfection. It had always been in persistence. At last, a young officer shouted, his voice trembling with excitement. "Captain, there! Every time it feeds, its energy spikes, then drops for less than a second." A heartbeat, a crack in the armor. Elena nodded. "That's where we strike." Jacob stared at her in disbelief. "You're suggesting we fly into the drop? That's suicide." Her gaze never wavered. "It's survival. The only way to kill a storm is at its heart." The crew fell silent. They knew what she was asking. To dive deeper into a monster that had swallowed entire worlds. To trust in a heartbeat so brief. It might vanish before they reached it. But one by one heads turned toward her, and not a single voice spoke against her. Humanity had always gambled with impossible odds. The comms lit up as Elena addressed the fleet. "This storm thinks it can consume us. It thinks we will break like the others. But we are human. We are forged from chaos. And tonight we prove to the galaxy that even a storm can bleed." The ships roared forward. Engines flared, shields burned, and weapons fired in chaotic unison. The maelstrom writhed, unleashing waves of fire, but the humans dived straight into its core. Inside, the universe turned into madness. Light blinded their eyes. Energy screamed against their shields. Time itself felt fractured, each second stretching into eternity. But they held together, formation locked, hearts united. Then the moment came. The heartbeat. For less than a breath, the storm's energy dropped. The human fleet surged, pouring every weapon into the opening. Railguns fired, missiles struck, drones exploded in self-sacrifice. A rain of human fury poured into the storm's heart. The maelstrom convulsed. For the first time, it screamed. Not with power, but with pain. On the horizon dawn, Elena's hands trembled against the console. She could feel it. The storm was not invincible. It could be hurt. But as the storm reeled, a deeper terror rose. The core lit up, brighter than ever before. The patterns inside shifted, no longer chaotic but precise, and with terrible clarity, Elena realized the truth. "It's waking up," she whispered. The storm had not shown its full strength, until now. And in that moment, surrounded by fire and death, the humans understood. This was not only a battle for survival. This was the opening of a war far greater than they had ever imagined. The storm no longer moved like a mindless beast. It shifted with purpose, every surge of plasma striking not at random, but with terrifying precision. The maelstrom had awakened. On the horizon dawn, silence gripped the bridge. Every crew member felt the change. The storm's energy was no longer wild. It pulsed in rhythm like the steady march of war drums. Captain Elena Ward's eyes locked on the glowing heart of the maelstrom. "We heard it," she whispered. "And now it knows us." Commander Jacob Vance swallowed hard. His voice was tight. "Captain, what if we woke something we cannot put back to sleep?" Elena did not answer. She couldn't. Her mind raced, heart pounding with equal parts fear and resolve. Humanity had crossed a line no one else had dared to. Now they faced the consequences. The storm struck again. A tendril of fire, thicker than a mountain, lashed across the fleet. A cruiser vanished. In a burst of flame, a carrier spun out of control, its hull cracking open as escape pods shot into the void. The screams of its dying crew echoed through comms before fading into silence. Elena's fists tightened. She turned her grief into steel. "All ships, maintain formation! Stay close to the motherships! Make the storm fight for every inch!" The Arc-class motherships moved forward, their massive frames absorbing the brunt of the assault. Their chaotic shields flared wildly, bending light, scattering. Plasma, reflecting fragments of the storm's own energy back at it. They looked like burning giants in the darkness, scarred, battered, but unbroken. From distant channels, alien voices returned. Observers from the Alliance spoke in disbelief. "The humans are still alive. They should have been destroyed. They fight like no species we've ever seen." But the voices were not cheers. They were fear. Fear not of the storm, but of what humanity was proving. Inside the storm, the human fleet pressed closer to the core. The closer they came, the stranger everything became. Gravity twisted in impossible directions. Time bent, stretching seconds into eternities. Some crew swore they heard whispers inside their minds, not from comms, but from the storm itself. A young officer trembled at her station. "Captain, it's speaking. I can hear it." Elena froze. What does it say? The girl's voice cracked as she repeated the whisper. Consume. Become. Endless. The storm was not only alive, it wanted them. It wanted to pull them into itself, to turn their ships, their people, into fuel. Jacob's face drained of color. It's trying to break us. Elena steadied her voice. Then we don't let it. Remember who we are. Remember where we come from. No storm, no hunger, no ancient machine decides humanity's fate. Her words spread through the fleet, carried on open channels. Across every ship, soldiers, pilots, and engineers straightened in their seats. Fear still burned in their hearts, but alongside it came something greater, defiance. The maelstrom roared. Its core blazed brighter, and with a violent surge, it unleashed a shockwave unlike anything before. The fleet was thrown apart, ships tumbled, shields failed, alarms screamed. The Horizon Dawn spun violently, its hull tearing under the strain. Stabilizers. Failing! Shouted an engineer. Engines offline! Cried another. For a heartbeat, it seemed the ship would fall into the storm's blazing center, but Jacob slammed his hand on the console, forcing emergency systems to life. The engines coughed, roared, and caught again. The ship leveled, battered, but alive. Breaths of relief filled the bridge, but Elena did not relax. She stared at the core and saw something no one else noticed. In the heart of the storm, the broken machine pulsed again. But this time, she saw a pattern, not just a heartbeat, but something deeper. She whispered almost to herself. It's not only an engine. It's a prison. Jacob turned to her, confusion on his face. A prison? For what? Elena's eyes stayed on the light. Her voice was quiet, trembling with awe. For whatever is inside it. The crew froze. The storm was not just alive. It was not just built. It was holding something, something ancient, something too powerful to be left free. And now, by striking its heart, humanity had weakened its chains. As the realization spread, fear turned to dread. If the maelstrom was a cage, then what would happen if that cage broke? Captain, Jacob's voice was low, almost a whisper. We might have made a mistake. Elena turned, her face pale but determined. Or maybe this was always meant to happen. Maybe we are here because no one else would dare. The storm's light grew blinding. The machine within groaned like a god waking from endless sleep. Energy tore through space, ripping apart asteroids, bending planets, distorting stars. The crew braced. The fleet braced. Every soul felt the weight of something far beyond comprehension pressing against them. Then, for the first time, a voice, not human, not storm, spoke through the void. A voice that filled every ship, every mind, with words that shook them to their core. Who dares disturb my chains? The bridge fell silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Humanity had not just awakened the storm. They had awakened the prisoner within, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The storm fell strangely quiet. The endless thunder of plasma, the furious waves of fire, all of it stilled as though space itself was holding its breath. In the silence, the voice echoed again, rolling through every ship and every mind. Who dares disturb my chains? It was not a sound that came through comms. It was inside them, heavy and cold, a whisper that felt like iron pressing against their souls. Some crew clutched their heads, others shivered as though frost had entered their veins. On the bridge of the Horizon Dawn, Captain Elena Ward stood frozen. She had heard many voices in her life, commanders, enemies, friends, but none like this. It was older than stars, deeper than the void itself. Commander Jacob Vance's face was pale, his voice shaking. Captain, this isn't the storm. This is something else. Elena's gaze stayed locked on the glowing core. The storm was never the threat. It was the lock. The realization sank into the crew like a knife. The maelstrom was not a monster. It was the cage that held the true one. And humanity, in its defiance, had struck the lock. The voice rose again, sharper, darker. For aeons I have been bound. For aeons I have waited. Now, you bring me freedom. The storm convulsed, light, twisting, energy surging. The broken machine at its center shuddered like a prison wall cracking. Shards of metal tore free, spinning into the void. The maelstrom's form bent and split, its once blazing eye dimming as the prisoner pushed against it. Jacob's fists tightened. "Captain, if it breaks free, we won't survive. Nothing will survive." Elena's voice was calm, but her heart thundered. "Then we stop it before it does." Her words struck like steel, but the fear remained. No one knew how to stop something they could barely understand. The prisoner's voice grew louder, shaking every bolt of the ship. "You are not the ones who built this cage. You are not the jailers. You are too small, too fragile. And yet, I smell defiance. I taste rebellion." Screens flickered. Systems failed. The prisoner wasn't just speaking. It was reaching into their ships, twisting their technology like toys. Lights went dark. Engines flickered. Weapons refused to fire. Humanity's greatest creations bent under the weight of a thought. For a moment, despair clawed at the crew. What could humans do against something like this? What chance did they have when even the storm had been nothing but chains for the true power inside? Then Elena's voice cut through the fear. "We've been underestimated before. Every species in the Alliance thought we were too weak, too reckless. But we are still here, and if this prisoner thinks it can break us, it doesn't know humanity." Her words sparked fire in the crew. Fear did not vanish, but it was replaced by defiance. They were human. They had stood against storms before. They would stand again. Elena turned to her crew. "Find me its weakness. Every prison is built with limits. It can't break free without tearing itself apart. We hold it there." The crew scrambled, pulling what little data they could as the storm writhed and cracked. Each second felt heavier, as though the universe itself was bending under the prisoner's awakening. Then, faintly, the young officer who had heard the whispers before spoke again. "Captain, it's speaking to me directly." Elena's eyes sharpened. "What does it say?" The girl's lips trembled as she repeated the words, her voice barely above a whisper. "It says, 'I will spare you, little ones. Join me, and you will share my endless hunger.'" A chill spread across the bridge. The prisoner wasn't just breaking chains, it was tempting them, offering them survival through surrender. Jacob spat the words like poison. Join it? Become part of that thing? Never. But Elena's mind worked fast. The prisoner was speaking, bargaining, tempting. That meant it was not all-powerful. Not yet. It needed them. She spoke with steady defiance. "Tell it humanity does not kneel." The officer nodded, closed her eyes, and repeated the message in her mind. The ship trembled violently, as if the prisoner itself had screamed in rage. "Defiant insects, then be consumed with your storm!" The maelstrom exploded outward, its plasma roaring like a supernova. Human ships scattered, shields breaking, hulls tearing. One frigate disintegrated instantly, its crew lost in fire. Another carrier spun, engines bursting before vanishing in silence. But the motherships held, scarred, burning, cracking apart, yet still they stood, their chaotic shields roaring like defiant flames. On the horizon dawn, Elena's voice rang out over the chaos. "All ships, regroup. This isn't the end, it's the beginning. If it wants to be free, it must break the storm completely. That means it's vulnerable now. We strike while it tears itself open." Her crew hesitated, staring at her with wide eyes. To dive deeper now when the storm itself was splitting apart, it was madness, pure madness. But Jacob met her gaze, and for the first time he smiled through the fear. "You're right. Madness is our weapon." The order was given. The fleet surged forward again, diving into the core as the prisoner clawed at its chains. Every human ship fired with everything they had left. Railguns blazing, missiles burning, drones sacrificing themselves in explosions of light. And for the first time, the prisoner screamed not in rage, but in pain. The storm twisted, its chains straining, its prison breaking. But within the fire, humanity stood unyielding, striking not with perfection, but with relentless defiance. On the bridge, Elena's eyes burned with a single thought. If this galaxy has waited aeons for someone to challenge you, then let it be us. The prisoner's voice shook the stars. "Then you, humans, will be the first to fall when I rise." But Elena only whispered back, her voice calm, fierce, and unbroken. "No. We'll be the first to make you bleed." The galaxy had grown used to silence after the storm's awakening, but now, that silence shattered. The prisoner's voice rippled across every ship, sharp like a blade cutting through thought. "You are children scratching at stone. Do you not see the futility?" Yet humanity did not break. Their motherships burned like torches in the night, scarred but alive, weapons flaring even as systems failed. Where other species would have retreated, they pushed forward. Captain Elena Ward stood tall on the Horizon Dawn's bridge. The ship shook under the prisoner's power, consoles sparking, oxygen masks dangling from ceilings, but her eyes stayed locked on the storm's glowing heart. "Hold steady," she ordered, her voice calm and firm. "We push until we find its weakness." Commander Jacob Vance leaned closer, his jaw tight. "Captain, we can't hold much longer. We've lost 3 destroyers already. Shields at 30%. Elena did not flinch. "And the others?" "They're still fighting," Jacob said, almost in disbelief. That was humanity. Fragile bodies, short lives, limited weapons, but when the void itself rose against them, they fought harder. The prisoner's power surged, tearing apart its chains. Each crack of light shook like thunder, sending waves that flung ships into chaos. The alien fleets that had once mocked humanity now watched from a distance, their commanders whispering in fear. None dared enter. The humans alone stood in the fire. A message came from the Iron Valor, one of the Ark-class motherships. Admiral Rourke's voice boomed, tired but fierce. "Elena, if we fall back now, we give it the galaxy. If we hold, we might buy enough time." Elena replied without hesitation. "Then we hold, even if it kills us." Rourke gave a rough laugh, the kind born from soldiers who had already accepted death. "Aye, humanity never learned how to bow." As the ships closed in, chaos became their weapon. Human tactics were unlike the other species who relied on perfect formations and flawless execution. Humanity thrived in disorder. Broken squadrons regrouped on the fly, damaged drones were turned into bombs. Frigates wove through fire like hunters, reckless but effective. The prisoner roared. Its voice was like 1,000 storms speaking at once. "You cannot bind me again. You cannot kill me. You will break first." But something remarkable happened. For every ship the prisoner crushed, the humans adapted. For every system it twisted, engineers rewired another. For every loss, survivors found new courage. They were not winning, but they were not losing either, and that unsettled the prisoner. On the Horizon Dawn, young Officer Mara, the girl who had heard its whispers before, suddenly gasped. She clutched the console, trembling. "Elena, I can hear it again. It's afraid." The bridge fell silent. Jacob stared at her. "Afraid? That thing?" Mara nodded weakly. Her voice cracked, but her eyes were wide with certainty. "It says, you should not exist. You should not be able to resist me." Elena's heart raced. If the prisoner could feel fear, then it could bleed. And if it could bleed, it could be stopped. She raised her voice, steady and sharp. "All ships listen. It fears us. That means it can be hurt. Pour everything you have into its core. Make it know humanity is here." The fleet obeyed. Missiles streaked through the dark. Railguns fired until barrels glowed red. Drones swarmed, exploding in violent sacrifice. Even dying ships used their last strength to ram forward, turning wreckage into weapons. The storm lit up like a burning sun. The prisoner screamed. Its chains cracked further, but so too did its form. The energy that was once smooth and endless now writhed, unstable. For the first time, humanity had pushed it back, but victory came at a cost. The Iron Valor was struck by a wave of energy, its hull breaking apart. Admiral Rourke's voice came through, harsh and final. "Keep fighting. Make it count." Then silence. On the bridge, Elena bowed her head. She felt the weight of every soul lost, every name erased in fire. But she did not weep. Not yet. Their sacrifice was fuel, and she would not waste it. Jacob turned to her, his voice low. "If it breaks free, none of this matters. We need something more than weapons. We need a plan it cannot predict." Elena's eyes hardened. Humanity had one advantage no other species could match. They were unpredictable. They thrived in chaos. "Then we give it chaos," she said firmly. "We make every ship act on instinct. No patterns, no formation, just survival. That will confuse it long enough for us to strike where it hurts." Jacob gave a grim smile. "Madness as strategy. Only humans would think of that." The order spread. Fleets broke into wild maneuvers, weaving through storms like sparks in the wind. No two ships moved alike. Some feigned retreat, only to dive back in. Others spun wildly, firing in every direction. To the prisoner, it was like trying to catch fire with bare hands. It roared in rage, hurling power in all directions, but the humans slipped through, striking again and again, and then, at last, a crack appeared. The prison's heart, once solid light, fractured. A wound in eternity itself. Mara gasped, her voice shaking. "Captain, it's weakening. The chains are breaking, but it's losing strength too. If we hit it now?" Elena's eyes blazed. "Then we strike with everything we have left. This is humanity's moment," every ship answered. Damaged frigates ignited their reactors in suicide runs. Cruisers launched final salvos. The motherships focused all power into their cannons, shaking under the recoil. The wound widened. Light bled into the void, burning like a dying sun. The prisoner screamed again, its voice less certain now, less infinite. "You will regret this defiance. You will curse the day humanity rose." But Elena only whispered back, her words carried across every channel. "No. This is the day the galaxy remembers us." The wound exploded outward, light scattering like broken glass across the stars. For one moment it seemed humanity had done the impossible. They had made the prisoner bleed. The stars burned with fractured light where the prisoner bled, its form tearing against the chains that had bound it for millennia. For the first time, the galaxy saw that the eternal storm was not invincible. Humanity had made the impossible real. But the battle was far from over. The wound in its core pulsed like a black sun, spilling out energy that swallowed ships whole. The human fleet was scattered, their losses heavy, their survivors clinging to courage like a weapon. On the bridge of the Horizon Dawn, Captain Elena Ward stood among the smoke and sparks, her voice cutting through chaos. "Report!" Jacob Vance wiped blood from his brow. "We've lost 30% of the fleet. The Iron Valor is gone. Drones are nearly depleted. Shields are failing on every ship." Elena's jaw tightened. And the prisoner? Mara, her young officer, shivered at the console, her eyes half closed as if listening to something beyond human hearing. Her voice was small but steady. It's angry, but not broken. It's gathering power more than before. It wants to finish us all. The bridge fell silent. Even the humming consoles seemed to pause. In the distant void, the prisoner's chains glowed brighter, cracking under its own fury. Its voice thundered across every channel, no longer calm, but dripping with rage. Foolish mortals, you think you cut me. You think you can kill the storm itself. I am eternity. I am the fire between the stars. You are nothing but dust, and dust you shall remain. The voice pierced the minds of every soldier, filling them with despair. Some whispered prayers, others clutched charms or photos of family, far away. But the humans did not retreat. Their ships still pressed forward, defying the storm. That defiance confused the prisoner. It had seen great empires bow, mighty fleets collapse, ancient races surrender without resistance. But these fragile beings with short lives did not bend. They burned brighter. Admiral Yara Quinn, commanding from the mothership Eternal Resolve, broke the silence on the comms. Elena, if we fight as we are, we won't survive another hour. We need a plan, something bold, something reckless. Elena's gaze hardened. Humanity was built on reckless survival. She turned to Jacob. What do we have left? Jacob scanned through dying systems. Not much. Half our weapons are gone. Engines are burning out, but we still have the arc cores. Elena froze. The arc cores were humanity's most dangerous invention, massive energy reactors designed not only to power ships, but, in absolute desperation, to explode with the force of a newborn star. No one had ever dared use them in battle. She spoke, softly, almost to herself. A fire to burn a god. Mara suddenly gasped, her hands gripping the console. Tears filled her eyes as she heard the storm whisper again. It knows, she whispered. It knows what we plan. It's afraid again. Jacob frowned. Good. Let it be afraid. But Mara shook her head. No, that fear makes it desperate. It won't wait anymore. Even as she spoke, the prisoner unleashed its fury. Waves of plasma tore through the void, ripping apart human cruisers. The chains shattered further, pieces of glowing fragments spinning into the dark like shards of broken suns. The prisoner's true form began to emerge, a swirling mass of fire and shadow, larger than any world, hungering to consume everything. Elena's voice cut through fear. All ships, listen carefully. This is humanity's last stand. If the arc cores fail, the galaxy falls. If we succeed, the storm ends here. Admiral Quinn's voice trembled, but it carried strength. Then we gamble. Everything. Humanity has never feared impossible odds. Every ship captain, every soldier, every engineer gave the same reply. A single word. I. The humans moved with unity that no other species could match. Arc-class motherships shifted into position, forming a rough circle around the prisoners. Pulsing wound. Damaged frigates and cruisers took the outer ring, shielding the giants with their lives. Drones, what few remained, swarmed like angry sparks, drawing fire. The prisoner roared as it realized the trap. You dare sacrifice your world's heart? You dare to burn yourselves for nothing? Elena answered calmly, her voice echoing across the fleet. We are human. We burn brighter when the night grows darkest. The arc cores began to charge. Deep inside the motherships, reactors howled with unstable energy. Light bled through the hulls, bathing the void in a ghostly glow. The prisoner struck harder, desperate to break the circle. Ships died. Thousands of lives vanished in fire. Yet not one Ark-class mothership broke formation. Mara's voice trembled as she cried out. "Captain, it's trying to speak into me again. It says we are fools, that it will return no matter what we do, that we cannot erase it." Elena turned to her, eyes fierce but kind. "Then tell it this. Humans don't erase storms. We survive them, and that is something it will never understand." Mara nodded, her fear turning into quiet courage. The final stage began. Arc cores at 90%, Jacob reported, sweat on his brow. "Any more and the reactors won't hold." Elena raised her hand. Her voice was soft but carried through every ship. "To every man and woman out there, hold fast. Remember why you fight. Remember Earth. Remember the people who believe in us. This is not the end of humanity. This is our beginning." The order was given. "Detonate the arc cores." Light erupted. The void became a second sun, brighter than any star. The prisoner screamed, its form writhing as the explosion tore into its wound. The chains shattered completely, but instead of freeing it, the unleashed fire consumed it. Ships were flung back, their hulls cracking under the shockwave. The horizon dawn shook as if the universe itself would split. Elena gripped the railing, refusing to fall. Through the blinding light, Mara cried out, "It's breaking! The storm is collapsing!" And then, silence. The blinding glow faded into starlight. Where the storm had raged, only drifting fragments of light remained, dissolving like ash in the wind. The prisoner was gone. The battlefield was silent, scarred by sacrifice. Half the human fleet was destroyed. Countless lives had been lost, but humanity still stood. Their motherships, though broken, still burned with stubborn light. Elena's voice came through the comms, quiet but unshakable. "Let the galaxy remember this day. Humanity was underestimated. Humanity was doubted, but we did what no one else would dare. We faced the storm, and we survived." Mara whispered the last words, her voice filled with awe. "We made eternity bleed." The battlefield drifted in silence. Where the eternal storm had once raged, only the soft glow of scattered light remained, like the dying embers of a fire too ancient to imagine. The humans had done the impossible, but the cost was carved into the void. Broken ships floated like wounded birds, their hulls torn open. Thousands of lives had been lost, and the survivors carried the weight of their sacrifice in their eyes. Yet, through exhaustion and grief, there was also pride. For the first time, the galaxy would look at humanity not as weak or reckless, but as something far greater. On the bridge of the Horizon Dawn, Captain Elena Ward stood among her weary crew. The ship was cracked, its lights dim, but its heart still beat. Elena's gaze swept over her people. Jacob slumped at the console, Mara trembling with exhaustion but alive, engineers patching systems with sparks and scorched hands. They were broken, but they were not defeated. Jacob whispered hoarsely, "It's over. The prisoner, it's really gone." Mara's eyes filled with tears. She could still hear faint echoes of the storm, but they were fading, dissolving into nothingness. "It won't come back," she said softly. "We didn't just wound it. We ended it." Elena closed her eyes, letting out a slow breath. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel the weight lift from her shoulders. Humanity had stood against eternity and survived. News of the victory spread quickly. Across the intergalactic alliance, signals carried the truth. The humans had destroyed what no empire dared face. Alien leaders who once mocked Earth now sat in stunned silence. Fleets that had abandoned humanity during the crisis now sent, hurried. Transmissions filled with disbelief and praise. On the council world of Vera, the alien High Council gathered in their crystal chamber. The hall was filled with voices of species from across the stars, some tall and luminous, others insect-like with chittering tones, and many more beyond human imagination. They argued in confusion and awe. The humans should have been wiped. "Out!" hissed one counselor with silver skin. "They threw away fleets like sparks in a storm!" cried another, their tendrils trembling. "And yet," said an old reptilian elder, his eyes glowing softly, "they succeeded. Where we saw death, they saw hope. Where we calculated odds, they embraced sacrifice. We must accept the truth. Humanity is not what we believed." The chamber fell silent. The galaxy had underestimated Earth. That mistake would never be made again. Back on the shattered front lines, survivors lit beacons across the wreckage. Each glowing flame marked a ship lost, a crew fallen. The void became a field of lights, a memorial in the darkness. Humans and aliens alike paused to honor the dead. Elena stood at the viewport, her voice heavy with emotion as she addressed the fleet. "To all who gave their lives, to every soul who stood with us, know this. You did not fall in vain. You gave the galaxy a future. You gave humanity its place among the stars." Her words spread across every surviving ship. Soldiers wept openly, engineers bowed their heads, even hardened veterans let their tears fall because they knew this was more than victory. It was rebirth. Mara, still pale, looked at Elena with quiet wonder. "Do you think the galaxy will ever truly accept us now?" Elena smiled faintly, though her eyes glistened. "They don't have a choice. Humanity just showed them what it means to fight for tomorrow." The Eternal Resolve, Admiral Yara Quinn's mothership, limped into formation beside the Horizon Dawn. Its hull was cracked, its engines failing, but its beacon still shone. Admiral Quinn's voice came over the comms, weary yet filled with fire. "Ward, you and your crew saved us all. History will remember this day, not as the day the prisoner fell, but as the day humanity rose." Elena's chest tightened at those words. She thought of Earth, far away, still scarred by wars of its past, still struggling with unity. Would they understand what their sons and daughters had done here? Would they believe that a small, stubborn world had changed the fate of the galaxy? In the weeks that followed, fleets of alien ships arrived at the battlefield, not to fight, but to help rebuild. They came humbly, offering supplies, repairs, and respect. The galaxy had learned something it could never forget. Humans were not fragile, not foolish, not insignificant. They were the fire that burned against the storm. And yet, deep in the silence of space, the true twist revealed itself. When Mara finally woke from a deep sleep in the medbay, her eyes opened wide with shock. She could still feel something faint, buried deep in the void, a whisper. Not of the prisoner itself, but of the energy left behind. It was not alive, not conscious, but it was familiar. It felt like potential. When she told Elena, the captain placed a hand on her shoulder. "If it left something behind, then we'll be ready. Humanity always is. That's why we survived when no one else did." Mara nodded, her fear turning into determination. Humanity had not only defeated the storm, they had inherited part of its strength. What they did with it would shape the future. At last, the human fleet returned home. Earth's skies filled with the glow of battered ships entering orbit. Families gathered across cities, villages, and stations, watching with awe as heroes returned. From the edge of eternity, children waved flags, elders wept. For the first time, all of Earth stood united in pride. The motherships descended slowly, their scars shining like medals. Each one carried the story of survival, of sacrifice, of victory. Humanity had stepped into the stars as wanderers, uncertain and underestimated. Now they returned as defenders of the galaxy. Elena stood before her crew as they disembarked, her voice breaking but strong. They claimed Earth would never rise again. They said we were too small, too fragile, too divided. But we proved them wrong. We faced the storm. We faced eternity. And in the end, she raised her head to the endless sky, her words echoing like a vow. Humanity did not just survive. We became the dawn.